Jason, there's just one or two that still are waiting for the system to let them in.
Problem.
Jason, I'd say you can go ahead. I will let any journos in that join a couple of minutes.
Perfect. Brilliant. Thanks very much, Al. Hi, guys. Thanks very much. And thanks for joining us on our latest Coaches on the Couch series. We've got three men here with us today. Toby Booth, head coach of the Ospreys, Marco Bortolami, head coach of Benetton, and of course, Jake White, head coach of the Vodacom Bulls. I'm going to ask everyone, if you'd like to ask a question, to please raise your hand and then I will call your name out. We'll limit it to 2 questions per journalist to start off with. And then if we have time, guys, we're going to go back around again and we'll let guys get in whatever questions they want to get. So kicking off, I've got a question straight away. I've got someone, Nathan Kolela, wants to speak straight away. So if you want to jump in there.
Thank you very much.
Just
thank you very much.
Where you're from, if you don't mind, and who you want to direct your question with. Thanks.
Sure. This is Nathan Kolela from the Sports Boom. This is my question for Jake White. Jake White, how would you sum up the performance of the Currie Cup side in the round robin, and how's preparation been for the URC squad?
Nathan, yeah, it's been going well. Obviously, we got a big game this weekend against the Sharks in the semi-final. But yeah, I've been very happy. I mean, we've obviously not only the Currie Cup doing well, some good additions to our squad. They've blended in nicely with us, and I'm looking forward to seeing how we can kick on from last year. So yeah, I mean, it's very, very exciting times for the Bulls. To have played in 2 finals in 3 years, and then, as I said, get the new additions we've got, and having momentum going into the Currie Cup playoffs is obviously a nice position to be in.
Thank you, Jason.
Cheers. Thanks, Cobus. Ashfaq, you want to jump in there next, please? Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. To Jake, Jake, hope you're well there. Last season was almost a perfect campaign. To host a home final was obviously fantastic outcome there, and just coming short on in terms of the title. What do you think needs to change this time around for you to get over the line?
I don't think we need to change anything, Ashfaq. I think, to be fair, it will happen over time. I think one thing we mustn't forget is, I've been saying to you since we started, that our squad is still very, very young, still very, very inexperienced. And I think everyone would accept in our circles that we've exceeded our expectations the first 3 seasons, and with the additions we have now, guys like Cobus Visa that are a bit older, Namakaba that's joined us, but older, Sintu Manjezi from Glasgow, but older. I think the blend of getting the group that we had together, that will age anyway. In other words, I think we have 8 or 9 guys in the Springbok setup now this year, which is the first time in a long time. So it's not a case of, what do we change? Yes, I mean, obviously, we look at ways in which we approach certain things, and things that work we'll keep the same. And when we need to change, we change. But I think everyone in our club, everyone's involved in our club would be on the same page that, we've exceeded where we should be, and this will be a nice time for us to actually kick on and learn from the lessons we learned, not only last year, for the last 3 seasons.
And just to add to that, Jake, the depth in your squad, as you say, you've added some players, but also when you have the guys now becoming Springboks over the last few months and gaining more test experience, that will obviously raise sort of their level as well, performance and experience in pressure situations.
Well, Ashfaq, I'd said it to someone on Monday. I mean, I can't remember when last, relatively inexperienced players like we had now with Ruan Nokia, Ulrich Lowe, playing, and even Kane Moody, who played last week, playing against the All Blacks at test level and then winning 2 tests in a row. I mean, that kind of confidence and that kind of learning that they got there, that'll help us in playoff games going into the URC and in big games in the URC where we need to win. So, yeah, there's no doubt that, in a short space of time, I mean, literally 3 URC campaigns, we've I think, as I said, 9 Springboks in the squad, and that'll make us so much stronger because we can almost almost pick a Springbok in every position now, which is a great place to be when you want to win this competition.
Brilliant. Thanks, Cobus. Michael, if you want to jump in there.
Thanks very much. Hi, Jake. Good to see you again. Jake, I was just looking at the ins and outs of the SA teams, and you're one of the few teams that hasn't had too many sort of changes. You've been quite stable. Just apart from obvious talent, you've been doing this a long time. What's at the heart of your recruitment philosophy when it comes to the right players for the fit?
Well, a couple of things, Michael. I mean, obviously, you look for the right kind of player, and I'm talking about as a person. I think everyone talks about it, but you really need someone that fits into the way your club wants to develop. And then secondly, the combination between youth and experience. I think, we're very fortunate now that we've added, as I said, much more seasoned campaigners. A guy like a Piwe Deanti's come in as a Springbok winger. A guy like Cobus Wies's come in as a seasoned English Premiership player. You saw what Akka van der Merwe did last year. You saw what guys like that have done to our team. Marcel coming back from overseas from Ulster. So I would say that's the secret, is making sure you get the balance right between youth and experience. And I would think this year is probably the closest we've been to the ideal combinations we're looking for. Junior guys coming Springboks, and older guys that are coming back. And I don't say old as in, Cobus Wies is only 27, and Piwe Deanti is not even 30. I think he's also late 20s. So, that's the kind of age profile I spoke about when I got the job. Is we lost that middle age group. We had lots of Jan Hendricks and Ulrich Loos and that age group that were all youngsters coming out of the junior ranks, and we had like Mornay Steyn and Bismarck du Plessis and those guys that were at the back end of their careers. For the first time in 4 seasons, I think we've got the middle age group now sorted as well. So we've got youngsters like Cameron Hanekom that are still young. Even Ulrich Low is relatively young. But we have now got a group of players that fit in the middle bracket that will obviously make us much stronger and much more will allow us to have much more depth in our squad selections.
Thanks very much, Jake.
Thanks, Michael. Ken, if you want to jump in there.
Jeez, guys. I mean, is there any questions for the other coaches? There's an Italian guy here, and there's a Ospreys guy there as well. So,
how do you know I'm going to ask you a question, Jake?
That's what I was saying. Thanks, Ken.
Yeah, I'm afraid it is for you, Jake. Sorry. Jake, you've kind of touched on it in your answer to Michael, but in the last couple of URC seasons, at the end of every campaign, you kind of made structural changes to how you looked at the whole campaign as a whole. And I'm just interested, after this last one, I mean, was it just a case of things in the final didn't work out, or are there changes in terms of how you approach the season as a whole that you might be looking at, or was that pretty much spot on? You made the final at home. What more could you do?
Yeah, Ken, I want to just, I suppose, I reflected a lot with the group after the final, and I think what really hit me and what hit the squad was we underestimate the value of playing. We played the Sharks in the final round with a really strong Springbok-laden group. We then played Benetton that have a majority of the Italian players. We then played Leinster that have the majority of the Irish players. And then we played Glasgow, who have lots and lots of international players as well. And I think the collective attrition and the collective effort that it took to play 4 consecutive games like that took it out of us in the last round. Now, that doesn't mean the other guys did it right or wrong. That's why I think I'm fully confident now that the lessons those guys that had to play 4 consecutive. I mean, most guys you wouldn't play South Africa, Italy, Ireland, and Scotland in 4 weekends with the same group of players either. And you wouldn't probably expect to win all those games. So that's why I'm talking about depth in our squad. I'm talking about those additions we've made to our team. That's why I'm talking about the average age of the group going up. that's why I'm mentioning Springboks that have now become a little bit more gun hardened. Having guys on Saturday beating the All Blacks in test. I mean, a guy like Ruan Nokia, that's his third test match. There's some guys who play the All Blacks 20 times and don't beat them. So when you add that all up, I think what I'm trying to say to you, I'm answering it is, I think the season went well. The planning worked spot on. We got a home final. What happened in the last game? I think it was a collective thing of what happened in the last month of that tournament. It was probably a bridge too far. And I'm hoping now with the squad we have that we will be able to, in other words, be a little bit tougher to last 4 weeks in that level, but also be able to change the squad around in the season so that we don't lose our legs in the back end of the comp.
Brilliant. Thanks a million. Griff, you want to jump in there, please?
Brilliant. Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
We can.
Lovely. Hiya, Toby. How are you doing? I'm
Good,
just
thanks.
wondering, I'm going to start with just hearing Jake there speak about the resources, Springboks in every position in terms of the strength that they got. Does that give you a sort of sense of even more of what you're up against each year?
You mean envy?
You use the word that you want, Toby.
Yeah, well, if Jake's young squad is full of Springboks, that's a tough place to start from, right? I've known Jake a long time, and he won't mind me saying that, he's king of underplaying a lot of things, and I mean that as a greatest compliment to my friend. Look, it's very well that we're in the build our own business, and I'm not going to go over the have and the have-nots. We're in a situation where there's been a lot of change on and off the pitch in Welsh rugby and similar at the Ospreys. And yeah, we obviously moved a step closer last year, which was great. Even though come last game it was 2% chance, we fulfilled that prophecy and made the 2% chance into 100% chance. So the difficult thing for us is whoever we've got is trying to maintain and keep improving and give yourself some competitiveness, and that young players often need more sort of preparation time and development time. And last year's long pre-season was probably good for us, but again, this young group through the experience has got better, and we've only got an 8-week pre-season this time, so that makes things a little bit more challenging, at home and what we can control. But yeah, it's the backdrop is the backdrop, and obviously we'll put our best foot forward, as we will.
It's Justin Tipperick's last season, really. There was announcements at the end of last week. He got overshadowed a little bit. He's going to be a 1 year more as a player. He's not captain this year. Can you just sum up what you made of him since you started work with him 4 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Tips is a bit of an Ospreys institution, right? And everyone uses, legends and things like that. But for us, the way we describe the man in the blue hat is, if we were designing, our Ospreys man of the future, he'd probably look a lot like Justin Tipperick, because he's got a relentless, apart from being an exceptionally gifted, player, and has played at the very top level for a very long time. The thing that is so inspiring about him is because he puts everybody in front of himself, and he's got the best interest of the team all the time, and he wants to have an influence on the team, not necessarily for himself. And I've never seen him self-promote once since I've been there. So from that point of view, he's always got the best interest of everybody and just wants nothing more than the Ospreys to be, successful on whatever that looks like. And he's got his opinions and he contributes in a positive way. He comes through the front door, and he obviously canvasses the opinion of the boys, and especially with the youngsters, having a voice and someone's prepared to, support and challenge is really, really important. So yeah, basically he's the blueprint for the Ospreys players we're trying to produce.
That's great. I might come back with one later if that's right, when everyone's had it too. Thank you.
No problem.
Thanks, Griff. Appreciate it. Stefan, if you want to jump in there, please. Thank you.
Yeah, Stefan from Wales Online here. Just a couple of questions for Toby, please. Hi, Toby. Just on Justin Tipperick, obviously he's got a year left playing, but how successful do you think he'll be as a coach, or what do you think he'll bring when he does eventually become defence coach?
Well, you never know, because coaching and playing, as people on this call will tell you, are completely different. you know, and it requires a different set of skills. But the one thing about Justin is, as I said, coaches are often selfless and they have to put the team first. And as I've just spoken previously, his attributes and his personality lends itself to that. And it won't be the fact from a knowledge point of view. The challenge for any player that becomes a coach, and especially a performance coach, not necessarily a development coach, is it's about getting out of their head into the players that you're trying and getting the buy-in from them. He will get the buy-in because of who he is and what he's got, but in relation to, you know, his ideas and how to articulate it, presentation skills, choosing the right club at the right time, for want of a better phrase, those are the sort of things that you have to learn. And the only way you learn that is by time in the saddle. And, you know, from that point of view, he's got some experience around him, and Mark Jones being the head coach, who's obviously got a defensive emphasis, will no doubt support him in that way. So we're hopeful that, you know, it's not all dumped onto Justin, like, you're the defense coach now, because modern coaching is about a team approach. You know, you have lots of people, you know, that support in different areas. It's not just isolated anymore. And, you know, we believe in a combination of people to coach different things at different times. And with that, he's hopefully in an environment that will allow him to flourish and grow at the right sort of tempo.
Yeah, I'm sure you watched the under-20s World Cup. Morgan Morse, outstanding again. Are you expecting big things from him this season? Is he going to be at the forefront of the Ospreys this campaign?
Well, he's probably. I mean, the one thing that everyone knows on the sort of numbers that we have, the one area that we're very strong on is back row. So from that point of view, he comes into an area of the pitch where actually we do have a bit of strength and depth, which is challenging for him, but also gives us the opportunity to put him in and take him out to sort of graduate his learning. It's not a dependency. Jake was talking earlier around, you don't want to be dependent on the same players all the time. And that's, you know, with young players, you know, you need to give them time to sort of decompress and actually take stock of their learning, and as well as not being physically exposed all the time. So, you know, he's a very young player that's exceeded probably where people expect him to be. But we want to give him enough that we can keep him moving forward, because he's going to be a long-term player for the Ospreys. So from that point of view, we need to get the tempo of his development right. But he'll be the first to admit he's got a lot of physical attributes. He's very dynamic. He's a massive competitor, but there's some rough edges that certainly need to be taken off if he's going to get to the very, very top. And it's unrealistic to expect him to be there, but you've got to expose them in the battle, in order to see where they are. So yeah, we're excited about him, of course, but he's still got a lot of things he needs to do.
Great, thanks, Toby.
Brilliant, excellent. Michael, if you want to come in there again, please.
Thanks very much. It's just a question for Marco. You know, your team has made such great strides over the years and over the seasons in this competition as well. Do you feel, or how close do you feel you are to the point now that, you know, other teams and some of the bigger teams out there are thinking it's a good day for Benetton can be a bad day for them, and more consistently so in the competition?
Yeah, obviously very pleased with the progression of the team in the last 3 years. But the challenge is obviously be happy what you've done, keep improving, and keep this ambition to try to beat the biggest team in the biggest stages. Obviously, the underdog tag we had in the previous year is going to be smaller and smaller this season. But I felt the group turn up for pre-season, and the international as well joined a couple of weeks ago. They are in the right mindset of understanding that there's still a long way to work hard to be there every single year and learn how to play the final stages of the season. Like Jake said, you learn how to be good at the playoffs the more often you are there, and it's not an overnight process. It takes years, especially for a club like Benetton. that we are still building our high performance culture, or winning mentality. But obviously you got to be challenging, and we want to make this process as quick as possible. So my job is to give confidence and also take pleasure what we are doing, what we have done well in the past, and what we are doing right at the moment. But always keep challenging the group, which is not always nice, but that's the only way. That's the only way we can grow. Biggest challenge for us this season is to play in three different competitions. So Jake is pretty lucky that he plays only two, URC and Champions Cup. We got the international window as well, because we got 25 international players in our whole squad. And that takes momentum out of our season every single time there's a break. But obviously it has been like that in the last 2 years. So we are becoming better and better managing those transitions times. Normally Six Nation time is a big challenge for us, and that's where we had a couple of hiccups last season. So, we got plenty of challenges. First year back in the Champions Cup as well, which is a completely different animal than the Challenge Cup. Listen, we got a very large squad. Like Toby said, rotating the squad is key, especially if you play in such a big competition. So it's going to be a big season in terms of strength in depth.
Thank you.
Michael, I just want to ask a follow-up question myself there to Marco, myself, just while we're on the topic. Marco, you've made two big signings there over the summer, in Louis Lina and Matt Gallagher. Matt, obviously coming from Bath, he has experience in the competition with Munster. He's been with Saracens. Louis, obviously a star for Harlequins the last while, and both of them have already played for the national side. How have they fit in during pre-season, and what do you expect them to add to your squad this coming season?
They're fitting very well. Two very different individuals. Matt Gallagher is outward personality, and he chats a lot and is very open. And Louis Lina is more introverted, so he's tasting the water at the moment and make sure he understands and he gets to know everybody. Well, the principle we wanted those two players to join us is to keep growing our high performance culture. We signed Malakai Fekitoa last year, hoping he was heading, and he did a great job. So we are attracting those players from big teams, Harlequins and Bath, because they're used to play big games, and they know how to influence the other players around them. Obviously, you build your aura as a team through years, but also attracting those players that can influence the team, and that's an ongoing process. So to go back to your question, they're fitting very well. They enjoy the team. They enjoy working hard. They'd be surprised over how hard we train, but that's always a good thing to me when a player is coming into our team and they're surprised how hard we work. It's good, because that means we're going the right direction.
Excellent, brilliant, thanks. Brendan, do you want to jump in there, please? Thank you.
Yeah, guys, just one for Marco, and maybe Toby can also just weigh in at the end there. Both Marco, you and Toby both achieved wins in South Africa last year. Just wondering, is it getting easier to tour South Africa? What have you learned, and how do you guys manage it? And obviously going ahead to the season ahead, how are you going to manage it going this year?
It's difficult to say it gets any easier. No, definitely not. But obviously, you start to understand what the challenge look like. Players start to understand what the challenge look like, and you become hopefully better and better. But South African teams are improving very fast as well, so they're not waiting for the other teams to catch up. But yeah, I think travel and altitude are the two biggest challenges when you travel to South Africa. But I think we did pretty well at the end of last season. I feel if you play in the right time of the year in South Africa, when it's not too hot, it's better than playing during actually our winter, which is their summer. So I think timing as well when you travel can have an impact. But apart from that, I don't think it gets any easier.
Yeah, just from our side, it's every day's a learning day. So obviously getting a couple of wins there in Challenge Cup, and obviously against the Stormers was great, for if nothing else, for to dispel the myth that it can be done. That's the first bit. But then you'll pop up and go and see Jake, and he'll humble you and remind you that you've still got a long way to go. But that's part and parcel of it. But I think as I'm sure the South African team's coming the other way. It's a learning opportunity. It is different, and what time of year you go is different. The travel between the two games is important. So you're always trying to refine those bits and pieces all the time and find out what works for you. So, yeah, again, it all depends as well what you turn up with, So we've been there a few times without any international players, which makes it extremely challenging for us with the squad depth that we've got. But that's the same group that managed to get a Challenge Cup win against the Lions away. So I think the big thing about the winning over there, and obviously won a couple of times now, is that it just fosters the belief in your group, and it allows you to believe it can be done.
Brilliant. Thanks. Ronaldo, if you want to jump in there, please. Thank you.
Hey, guys. Coach Jake, just a question for you. Looking at the performances of the South African teams in the Currie Cup, I know a lot of the URC guys haven't really played much Currie Cup. I mean, how do you think that benefits the South African teams, especially the development of the guys coming through the system? How does that benefit us as South African teams compared to the guys from Europe, who obviously doesn't have that domestic competition that's been played right before this URC? Do you think it has a massive impact above all of the other teams?
It can. So, I mean, what happens is it's now come to playoff stages, and all the South African sides are going to play the URC players. So what happens is you win twice. You get guys who've come through the system in the first 10 rounds, and then you get the URC players who've handled pressure at playoff games coming back in. So and we don't have because of preseason. I listened to Toby about 8 weeks there. When you play in the final, you have 3 weeks less than everyone else that finishes in the last rounds as well. So then you squeeze in a Currie Cup. So there's positives and negatives to it. One is you get some depth. You get guys that can play, and they play in and amongst some of the URC players, which helps. You get some game time because you can't really have friendlies. I mean, you can't. There's no literally the Currie Cup final, and the next week we play the round 2. We would have played round 1 on the same weekend, which meant it was almost impossible to play friendlies against anybody. So now you get a chance to have a hit out against some South African sides and see whether your combinations that you want to take into a couple of the first rounds are going to work. But at the same time, it also is a negative thing because you just never stop playing. You go from 1 week into the next week. And so I go back to what I said in the earlier question, is we got to manage what happens now so that we don't fall short in the last month of the competition again. One of the things coaches learn, or we look around, is Crusaders for many years, when they were dominating Super Rugby, weren't leaders in the first 4 or 5 weeks of the competition, and they ended up winning 7 Super Rugby titles in a row. So sometimes you can also learn by that is it's how strong you are at the back end of the comp that counts, not the beginning. So. But, obviously everyone wants to win every game and everyone wants to have the perfect squad. But it's not always the case like that. So we'll have to just adapt as we go along. But it is no doubt that South African sides playing each other in the next 2 weekends with all the URC players around is going to give us a nice reading for where we are as a group.
Yeah. Okay. Good luck, coaches. Enjoy the season.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks. Cobus, you want to come back in again there, please?
Thanks. My question is for Jake. Jake, you did mention now that you never stop playing. Coach Piwe yesterday alluded to the fact that there's quite a high injury toll in the senior squad at this moment. Are you concerned about that, keeping in mind that the URC season haven't even started yet?
Yeah, Cobus, I mean, I don't know if it's concerned. I think it just tests us as coaches to find out how we're going to adapt. There's nothing we can do about it. You can leave a guy on the sidelines and not play him in a game, and he can end up pulling a hamstring in a training session. And then you think, well, why didn't I just play him in a game? So I think having been doing this for a long time, I think what I can give our coaches guidance on is you're not going to change it. It is what it is. You're going to have to adapt. Never going to have the ideal preparation. Everyone in the old days, I think people, and again, people that have been around for longer as coaches, miss the days of rugby was a winter sport, cricket was a summer sport. When you finished rugby season, you had X amount of months to get yourself ready for the next season. And I think that's why we always think, gee, what happens now? Because we got injuries, we go from one competition to another. But that's the nature of what rugby is about now. It's not like it used to be in the old days, I mean, in the old days, you'd have a guy play cricket and New Zealand for his country. And that was feasible because there were 2 seasons. But so, yeah, Kubus, we have got lots of injuries. But, those injuries are like 6, 7 weeks or whatever, 8 weeks long. The season is so long now. By the time they come back, there'll be another group of players that will be injured. I've been in it long enough to know you never have your perfect 23 on the field. Never. I mean, when you think you're just about to get some player back, you end up losing 1 or 2 other players. So it's something that I think every coach realizes now. You can't go to bed at night thinking, what happens if I lose another guy? You just got to carry on.
Thanks, Jake. Thanks, Jason.
Thanks a million, guys. Mobeen, if you want to come in there, please. Thank you.
Hi, Jake. Hope you're well. Jake, just speaking about adapting, just in terms of your 2 campaigns, the URC and the Hurricane Cup as well, just how will you sort of manage both of those competitions? Because travel and logistics has been quite a problem. And also, the second question as well is, one of your key players, Curtly Aronson, he's obviously signed a short-term contract overseas. How big of a loss is that for you? Obviously, he'll be back for the playoffs, but in terms of he's been one of your key players, how big of a loss would that be for you?
Massive loss. I mean, massive loss in that he's won Player of the Year 3 years in a row at our club, and he's won Players Player of the Year, I think 2 of those 3 years as well, which means the group seem as importantly as the coaches and as the fans do. So it's a massive loss. But as you would understand, Mubin, the model we work in is we have to afford our players those opportunities to keep them in the country. Otherwise, you're going to have a mass exodus of players wanting to make money overseas. So that's give and take there. And then the first question you asked me was from the juggling. I think the only way, I think every team's the same. I think you want to go into each competition doing as well as you can, and the only way you can control that is when you see how you're doing in each competition. It's one of those. Again, as I said, about being able to adapt. Maybe we got Saracens first up in our first game away in Champions Cup. I think they've won it, many times, so they'll know exactly what to do when it comes to Champions Cup rugby. They'll have all the England internationals back. But we can't jump ahead and worry about what happens against Saracens. We got, obviously a lot of games between now and then for the URC. So, having been at Montpellier and coached in 2 competitions, a French Championship and obviously a Champions Cup and Challenge Cup originally when I was there, it's something that you learn as a coach. You plan as best you can for each scenario, the high road, the low road. And then as it goes along, you just have to, you obviously have to then take the route that is given to you or that is fallen in your lap, and then you have to control it as best you can.
Perfect. Thanks a million. Griff, you want to jump back in there again, please, when you're ready? Thank you.
Just Toby, quickly. It's out in the open now. This is your last season. I was just wondering how you were feeling going into this campaign in 11 days. How are you approaching it? What are the sort of emotions going into this final year with you for the Ospreys?
No different to before the announcement. No different to every year that comes. You have a sense of excitement, bit of trepidation, because that's what keeps you honest. With all the best planning and pre-seasons in the world, you don't know until the first game kicks off where you actually are, and then I'm sure it's a bit like, the duck floating on the pond. Every coach is like underneath is going, right, we need to do this, and this really quickly, because that's not where we thought it was. And sometimes it's, as we saw at Exeter at the weekend in our pre-season game, parts of our game stood up very well, and that's encouraging. So it's always a bit of suck it and see. But my attitude to it is like it always is, a sense of excitement. We enjoy doing it, and nothing gives you the emotional feedback of being, in professional sports and emotive business. And coaches feel that and have that as just as much as anybody as the players.
I was just wondering, you obviously, people said you overachieved last year with the resources, some of the results that you got, but not much has changed in Welsh rugby. Should Ospreys fans, Welsh rugby fans in general, expect an improvement from sides this season, do you feel?
You'll have to ask them that.
Okay, should Ospreys fans then?
Whether we overachieved, underachieved, or achieved, we just achieved. So from that point of view, that's where we've got to. What before last year, were we a top 8 side? No, but now we're a top 8 side. So, we've got to try and maintain top 8 performances, top 8 standards, top 8 things, look up, not down, all the things that you and I have talked about previously. So, but does it mean we're going to be there? No, it doesn't, because you need the injury gods to play their part. You need to win tight games. You need to make sure that, you finish what you start and all the things that you'd expect. But from a squad point of view, you're absolutely right. Our biggest advantage is the fact we've got consistency, but through no choice of our own, too much. There's limited changes in Welsh rugby, and certainly from our point of view. But they're a young group, they're a year older, so we're hoping that plays a part for sure.
Brilliant. Thanks. Stefan, if you want to go back in there, please, and ready. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, Toby. Obviously, all 4 Welsh teams are going to have to rely heavily again on younger players, as you did last season. I was just wondering, from an Ospreys perspective, are there any younger players who perhaps aren't household names now that you think by the end of the season have the potential to be names that, people are talking about?
So from our point of view, I know people were talking about him last year. I think Dan Edwards at 10 has been, very impressive in relation to his progress, considering he'd not started a game prior to last year, and his rise has been notable for that. So he's one that definitely sort of sticks out for me. I think that having a bit more strength in depth with Kieran Hardy coming on, I'm expecting Luke Davis and Ruben to continue, on their paths, which is exciting. And the young back rowers that about, Morgan Morse, Harry Deeves, those 2 boys are tenacious and, hometown favourites because they play the game in the right way. So those are probably less well sort of, they probably were breaking through last year. I think for me, probably Ben Warren at tight head is an exciting prospect. I think that he's physically in good shape, and we're expecting a decent season for him. And obviously you saw Cam Jones play a nice cameo in the Lions game over there. And to go and scrum well in South Africa is a good thing for him. And so yeah, those 2 out of the Duncan Jones factory are exciting for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned Ben Warren. He trained with Wales, didn't he, in the summer? Yeah. A lot of people would say that, I know Archie Griffin did well in the summer, but tight head probably isn't the strongest position in Wales. But is he somebody with international potential? I know it'll take time, but is he somebody that could sort of reach those heights potentially?
That's a difficult question to answer, especially the nature of that position. But he's progressing exceptionally well. He's being coached exceptionally well, which is great. And I think the biggest thing in the modern game is their physical potential, and he certainly has physical potential. So from that point of view, he's someone that I think we can be excited about. But like in those very positional specific functional roles, like tight head, hooker, 9, 10, the spine of your team, you need time in the saddle. And what will determine his time in the saddle is obviously how he starts the season. It's a big season for him that we're excited about, because the opportunity side of what we talk about, having smaller squads and dependency, is that you will get opportunity. So we're hopeful that he can grab it with both hands and continue his movement forward.
Great, thanks, Toby.
Brilliant. I just want to jump in there and ask a question while we're on that same subject, just to Marco. Marco, you've had a lot of young players come through the last couple of years. I mean, Tommaso Menoncello last year, 21 years of age, winning Six Nations Player of the Championship. Anyone else that we should keep an eye out for this season that could be coming through the ranks in Benetton?
Yeah, hopefully a couple of another young players. I think we got a back row called Giulio Marini. He was in the under-20s a few years ago, and he's developing very well. He's a big back row, which is something we are not used to in Italy, which is something very interesting. Apart from that, we had a lot of under-20s that played last week against Ulster, and Zanandrea is another center that is doing very well. Still a long way to go, but I think when you expose those young players to a different level, you got a feeling if they can do it, if they can make it or not. And at the moment, I got pretty positive feelings around 3 or 4 of them. But obviously, the transition from under-20s into be established, and not starting every game, but be established, it takes 1 or 2 years. And you got to allow this time for them to make mistakes and learn.
Brilliant, excellent. What is it that has changed, Marco, that you've done differently? Like to see guys like Menoncello come through. Like, I mean, he was only 21 when he won. He's just turned 22. What is it that's changed? Is it from the national setup? Is it from the clubs? Is it just yourselves directly? What have you done differently?
No, I haven't done much, to be fair. Tommy is quite an exceptional athlete, first of all, and he's very competitive. You got the 2 best ingredients for a rugby player to develop. Obviously, he still needs to learn a lot about the game and how to play in the outside center position as well, which is one of the most difficult one. But I think he's pretty talented in terms of physical output and competitiveness, which is very promising. Is coming from a group of players that had developed with the academy system that has been established a few years ago in Italy, and those players are coming at the right age now. So I think we are in a good place in the next 2 to 3 years. We got to keep working well at the young age if we want more players coming through.
Brilliant, thanks. Ashfaq, you want to jump in there, please, next? Thank you.
Yeah, just one for Jake. Jake, obviously you were gonna play the Stormers in Cape Town on the 21st, but now it's been postponed, so you're starting on the 28th against Edinburgh. You have Ulster at home and then a 3-match tour to Europe. How do you feel about that? Does it help you that there's a week later start, or yeah? Sorry, Jake, you're just on mute there.
Yeah, so definitely it helps because, we don't want to jump the gun, but it could possibly have been that we would have had to play 2 teams on if we had made the final of the Currie Cup. So, now it basically means that we can concentrate on making sure we can prepare each team as well as we can without trying to dilute two game squads ready for 2 fixtures. I mean, because whatever you do, you get Currie Cup final, which we all say, and we want it to be important, but we also then play the first round of URC against the Stormers. I mean, obviously, the chances are you're not going to get both right in terms of time, in terms of organization. So it has been a massive relief that we can now put that Stormers game later on next year, and then gives us a chance to focus on making sure we give the squad whatever they deserve to prepare properly.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else there, guys, want to jump back in with another last couple of more questions before we call it a day? Okay, Ahi, yeah, want to jump in there, please? Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Hi, Jake. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Jake, I just wanted to ask about Ruan, in terms of his development, how he's sort of grown at the Bulls over the last couple of years, and how has that sort of helped him, to sort of transition into international rugby, similar to the way he has in these last couple of games for the Bucks.
Yeah, actually, look, there's a success story if ever you want to hear one. I mean, he came from a small school. He wasn't a provincial player as a junior. He basically came in as a late developer through university. and now he's played the All Blacks and beaten them in a test match. And I think what he does is it's just because he's incredibly disciplined. He trains hard. He works as hard as he can. He puts incredible amounts of detail in. I don't think people are aware. He gets his own laptop. He's got his own analysis system on his laptop. So he works hours and hours behind the scenes on his game and on lineouts. And that's why I think he can play and contribute like he does into the Springbok setup. So I'm looking forward to him coming back as well, because all the experience he's going to pick up there. He's got different coaches. They've got different ideas. They've obviously got different systems they use. And I suppose it's a little bit like a computer whiz. The more codes he learns and the more systems he learns, the better he's going to become as a lineup forward. And that's one of the strengths he has. Is I think, again, under correction, but he's definitely one of the top in terms of lineout accuracy and lineout wins. I think he's one of the top guys in the competition. So he can only get better. He's still young, very young for a lock forward. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he comes back and brings whatever he's learned into the group.
Brilliant. Thanks. Have we got any more questions there, guys, or we call it a day? Everyone good? Everyone's got what they have? Brilliant. Okay. Guys, can I just remind everyone to make sure you refer to the competition as the BKT URC in the north and the Vodacom URC in the south. Thanks very much for joining us, guys. We might see you on the other calls during the week.
Sorry, Jake, could I please
sorry.
stay on for 2 more minutes? We have Johan Thormelin from a Sunday paper, and he's asked if he can ask you one question at the end. So if you could hold on, if you don't mind. Thank you. And Johan, also just stay on, please.
Perfect. Good. Everyone, guys, thanks. Appreciate that, Jake.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, guys. Mind yourselves.
Cheers. Thank you. Cheers, Marco. Cheers, Toby.
Cheers, mate. See you, Jake. See you, Marco.
Cheers, boys. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it, Marco. Mind yourself.
Hi, Jake. Thanks very much. How are you doing?
Good.
Nice to see you. Just one thing, seeing that the season is starting now, you talked a lot about getting back big players from overseas, the big names. I mean, you are vocal about that. Do you believe that the possible equity partnership that SA Rugby seems like they are concluding that might also help to get some of the big names back to South Africa, to the URC teams like the Bulls?
Johan, listen, I don't know if this is the forum, because I don't know the detail of all that thing. I'm under the impression that deal's still a long way to go, and that's from my leadership. There's still a lot of hoops to jump through before they're going to sign off any of those deals. That's the feedback I got. But saying that, I'm not sure how the monetary aspects will work. Because that deal goes through, I'm not sure, because I'm not privy to it, whether or not that means that the players and the clubs get more money to bring back better players or bigger players, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure about that. What I have said to you many times is we need the local players to be playing here. We need Springboks to be local players. And I think what I've been really excited about in this last block is the Sashas who play here, the Ruan Nokias who play here, the Ulrich Lows who play here, the Johan Groblers who play here, the Jan Hendrik Wessels who play here, the Jason Dixons who play here have proved that you don't need to pick overseas-based players. There are players in South Africa that can play and do well for the Springboks. So that, from a coaching point of view, that gives me great pleasure, because it means that players I've always doubted about should I stay or should I go have now seen that if they stay and they get picked, they're still good enough to compete against the best teams in the world.
Okay. No, thanks very much. I appreciate it.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, man.
Thank you. Cool,
Cheers,
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Jake. Thanks for hanging on.
Jake, thanks for
Thanks,
staying
Eddie.
on.
Thanks, Jason.
Cheers,
Bye, Lunga.
everybody.
Mind yourself, guys. Thanks.
Jason, do you want to stay on to chat to me?
Of course. As always.
Just hold on.
Wait, if someone just going to have it on.
For some reason you know what? I'll do what I did yesterday. I'll call you on Teams if that's okay.
Aye. Chat to you there. Bye-bye.